I want to welcome Jason Janz, CEO of CrossPurpose, to the stage for keynote address. All right.
I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Yeah, go Packers. And grew up in a family of poverty. My dad lost his business. As far as I know, I grew up, all I knew was poverty as a kid. My dad wanted a fresh start, so we moved out here in 1985. I was 11 years old. We knew one family in this city, a flight attendant with United, and our family of 7 moved into her basement. We all went to work and started to find our way here in this great city. I entered the clergy profession coming out of undergrad and worked in a church in the western suburbs, but felt like the church had limited impact in the neighborhood, and I wanted a different life and a different way to live out my faith. And so my wife and I and our 4 boys under the age of 10 moved into 5 Points in 2008, and that's where we fell in love with our neighbor, Tiffany. And we wanted to do a deep walk with the poor in our own lives, just we'd say often to save our own souls, I guess you would say, and Tiffany began to be our teacher. But I started learning about her story. She was helping us out with some foster care children in our home, but I saw that she was changing oil at the local Walmart for over a decade, stuck at $13 an hour, and she was bright and had a management mindset. So I thought everything I thought about poverty alleviation at that point began to flip upside down, realizing that turkey dinners, backpacks, bikes, and Christmas gifts were not going to change the game. We needed to do deep development and provide access and opportunity. I'm happy to say Tiffany now is an executive. She was the first student in our program. She's an executive at a printing company. She's making 6 figures. She bought her home. She was the first black woman to run a FedEx store in the state of Colorado. And she's now on our board, so she's now my boss. And that journey really led us to start CrossPurpose in 2012. We made this promise to 19 families: we'll help you get out of poverty, whatever it takes. This year we'll work with 500 families. Hannah Scandera from the Daniels Fund asked me to come and talk to a bunch of foundations about workforce in Colorado. This was about 6 months ago. And I was struggling a little bit with my presentation. I didn't feel like I did well because, workforce for me is a means to an end. The end is really the flourishing of our communities and the abolition of poverty. Over the last 12 years, I'm happy to say this summer we'll graduate our 1,000th graduate at a wage income of between $40,000 and $50,000. But Julie Stone from Gary Community, who's here, said to me, she said, Jason, if all we do is wage growth, jobs are great, but if we want to make change that will outlast all of us, we have to talk about wealth. Because black Americans in 1865 owned 0.5% of the nation's wealth, and 150 years later, they own 1.5% of the nation's wealth. So we can't just do wage growth and jobs, we must do wealth building, because the metric of justice is wealth. This made me think beyond just my individual venture, but realize saying we need an ecosystem that actually helps everybody move up the mountain that you now see in front of you, and there's a card on your table showing it. So I sketched this thing out, and I share it with you for the first time in public today of how I actually see our city and economic mobility and why we all need to work together. There's 4 steps up the mountain. You've heard the Chinese proverb, if you give a fish, you feed someone for a day, but if you teach them to fish, you feed them for life. But I think that only gets you halfway up the mountain. You have to equip them with a good pole, and we also need to teach them to own the pond. That is actually building wealth. And by the way, this is not the poverty mountain. This is all of our mountains. In a room like this, when I talk to people, most people are doing wealth building activities in their lives by the age of 30. The average student that's sidelined in the workforce is walking into our program at age 32. And almost everybody realizes that they've had some help getting up that mountain. In fact, if you have children, you actually know what this mountain is like. I have 4 boys, ages 18 to 26. My oldest son is at the top of the mountain. He owns his home, he's married, he's doing well, he loves his job. My second son wants to live at stage 2 of the mountain. He just wants to bounce from college to college and study. My third son bounces around in step 3. He dropped out of college, but found out he liked scuba diving, got a certification, and on good days, he's teaching people how to do that on the Great Barrier Reef. My fourth son graduates from step 1 from high school next week, and my wife and I are going to shove him up that mountain with all of our might. But what if we actually invested in our employees the way all of us do to our loved ones? What if we saw every single person that was in our companies and we said, we're going to do whatever it takes to create wealth in your life? We have 3 players in this room, and I think we all need to work together. The philanthropic sector, that's churches and nonprofits and foundations. The private sector, which is business, and the public sector, which is our government. And all of us, we need to work together because together we actually make the community rise. Because the problem is, folks, people aren't moving up the mountain. If you're watching the news, we have a vanishing middle class, a shrinking higher ed population, the cost of living has skyrocketed, we have social isolation, and we have a suffering city. So the next slide will show you then, I think, where do we play on the mountain? I think there are really two broad categories of players. I call them nichers and navigators. Nichers basically focus on a problem and move as many people as possible through that, and they are experts at solving that problem. One of our great niche friends is Dress for Success. They give 3 sets of clothes to women going into a professional workplace and a fashion designer, and we use them like crazy. They help a lot of our women. Thank goodness they do. My encouragement to nichers, whether you're a higher ed or you're an employer, is be the best at your niche, help more people. But would you think about help navigating people up the next step of the mountain as well and help with some navigation? Because that's the other player, is the navigators. They don't try to solve the problem. They actually just invest in people and say, we're going to walk with this person all the way up the mountain through the problems that we know are going to come as they encounter each stage of growth. Navigators take responsibility for somebody, usually through coaching and catalytic capital. To navigators, we need you to multiply like rabbits. I think we're 10 to 1 undersourced for navigators in our city, but together we rise. So why do I say this to business? First of all, I want to say thank you. A lot of you in this room have hired our 1,000 neighbors, and you have provided them a place to find flourishing in their life and their finances. And I actually believe that business, you are the #1 navigator in our city. As awesome as I love our nonprofit, if somebody takes care of all of our services, they might actually partake in about 1,000 hours within our intervention. In your business over 5 years, you will 10x that contact with those employees. You are the #1 solution in our community to stop generational poverty and create generational wealth. What is wealth? It is when people have assets that will actually grow in value. The bottom half of our economy, when they pass on $9,000 in their estate. 51 to 99% pass on $47K in their estate. If we get people to $50,000 of net assets, they're in the top 10% of the American economy, which says scary things about our economy, but I think it's doable. So you have the most capital and the most contact, and you're most proximate to our neighbors. So sideline talent can be a ticket to a great company. But what if our CSR was actually measured in access to wealth building to our employees, where we were helping them get to the top of that mountain? Well, rather than have more slides and show a picture like that, I'm going to show you a true picture. I'm going to ask Tani and Derek if they would come on up. Tani graduated from our program 6 months ago, and in her story, it really captured me. She is a woman from the Northern Arapaho tribe on the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. She was a teen mom who escaped domestic abuse and said, I'm a survivor, and I left just to escape. I wanted to help people because I could not help myself. But I failed at nursing school. I bounced from state to state. But then my sister came down with an autoimmune disorder called GBS, and she lost her ability to move, and she could barely speak. But she said to me, you're not going to stay here, sister. You should be helping a lot of other people. Go back to Denver, join that program, and then become a nurse. That's your dream. So as I watched her tell this story, she came to CrossPurpose. She got her CNA, she got her phlebotomy, she got her IV certification, and she said this, I now work at Craig Hospital, where Derek is her boss, an award-winning neuro rehab research hospital, and I have full benefits, which include tuition reimbursement, life insurance, paying for 100% of my daughter's diabetes supplies. I couldn't ask for a better hospital to work for. Craig is where I plan to invest my professional life and where I hope to retire. My new dream is to be the wind that pushes others toward their dreams out of intergenerational poverty. And I'm happy to say she just got accepted into the Arizona College of Nursing and has started nursing school. And Craig, yes, let's give her a hand. Craig is offering tuition reimbursement. They've allowed her to go on student status, which means she can work part-time and keep full benefits while she's in school. She's a rehab tech, and she said, at Craig, they train me every day to be a nurse. They see her future, and she's been investing in her retirement fund from the first day. She's on the spinal cord floor, and she just found a patient who's just like her sister. I asked Derek, I said, how's she doing? He's the vice president of nursing services. He said, she's exactly what we're looking for at Craig Hospital. She has a strong teammate to patients, nurses, and techs. She's constantly paying attention to the needs of patients, including beyond the scope of practice. She looks out for everyone, and she's eager to learn, and she's well-loved. I forwarded this story to Dr. Jandel Ellen Davis, who many of you know. She's the CEO and president. And she emailed me back, and she says, Jason, I'm reading this through tears. I'm going to go down and hug Tani Red Wing. Because as a CEO, you have to care. You have to deeply care. But I actually believe in this city, you help me, or you help my family, you've helped Tani. And there's so many other people that we can help. This is bigger than one nonprofit, one business, one network. It's all of us. We can create the society that we and our neighbors want to live in. So together we rise as a community. So would you turn to the person on your left and say, together we rise? Turn to the person on your right and say, together we rise. And let's say it all together as companies, as government, as all the sectors. Let's say it, repeat after me, together we rise, and let's get louder. Together we rise. Together we rise. One more time. Together we rise. Thank you very much. You guys are welcome to take a seat. Thank you so much.